Починаємо.
Так, хорошо. Всем добрый день.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for watching us, for hearing us. It is a pleasure to be here today and to speak about this difficult work that was carried out during the last 6 or 8 months. Not in the atmosphere of secrecy, but without excessive publicity. Last week, we submitted our communication to ICC, and now we will be able to tell you what was done. In 2014, as you may know, Ukraine addressed ICC in order to start the preliminary investigation of the case concerning the crimes against humanity and war crimes in Donbass and in Crimea. Second important thing that is worth mentioning, and 1 year ago there was a big swap of prisoners, and many people returned to Ukraine, those Kremlin's prisoners who spent years of their life in Russian prisons in different cities of this big country. And this was a great day for us when they returned. And their return provided us with opportunity to carry out this work, to study evidence provided by victims of regime in Crimea, political prisoners, those who were under Russian repression, including torture and illegal court decisions, and their rights were violated in connection with these political persecutions. And several Ukrainian organizations before us provided communications to ICC. This is a big collective work, and I believe that everyone should be grateful to them for this. I know that our colleagues from Crimea SOS, and they also work to promote these cases in ICC in order to establish its jurisdiction over this case, and we hope that this will happen soon. And in this case, we provide a very important brick to the foundation of this case. I believe that our work is really unique. We are working with the witnesses, and the methodology of this research, of this interview was really interesting. And our colleague, Scott Martin, will tell us more about it later on. He is from Global Rights Compliance. And they carried out this work. This is a specific legal task, and I'm really grateful to our partners from the Center for Civil Liberties. They supported us comprehensively to make this case happen. And also my colleagues will tell you more about this paper. I represent Free Russia Foundation, and we spent many time and resources to help political prisoners in order that those political prisoners be freed. Of course, Ukrainian political prisoners, and those people who built this repressive machine, they should be brought to responsibility for lives lost, for those people who spent their years in humiliating conditions in prisons. And we carry out big work to introduce the whole number of Crimean officials, those Russian citizens who carry out repressions, and former Ukrainian citizens who also now work for this Kremlin machine. We are actively working with the European Parliament and actively working with the American bodies of justice, with the parliament, in order to carry out advocacy in this case. And we are going to move forward and dealing with this in order to bring these people to responsibility, and political prisoners should be freed. And I'm really glad that we've completed the big part of this work, and this will allow us to move forward and to go to the next stage, to pressure another institution to help. And we hope that, of course, this communication to ICC will bring the establishment of its jurisdiction over this conflict, and it will lead to consideration of the claim of Ukrainian side. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm Oleksandra Matviychuk. I'm head of the board of Center for Civil Liberties, and we are the partners in preparation of this communication to ICC that we present today. And as it was said, ICC is now at the stage of preliminary studying of this case, of Ukrainian case. There are issues concerning crimes in Maidan, crimes against humanity and war crimes committed in Crimea and in Donbass. And now the Office of Prosecutor gets these applications and analyze these documents, and we are waiting for a decision. It should have happened this year, but maybe it will be next year. And we hope that in the nearest future, ICC will approve this decision. And we hope that they will start the main part. Now we have preliminary study, and then there will be investigation. The Office of Prosecutor provides each year a report. Reports about the results of preliminary investigation, and when we see what they write in Ukrainian case, especially concerning occupied Crimea, we find them mentioning about political prosecutions, but not to the extent we like it to be. So there is a gap. And by this communication, we would like to fill this gap. So why political persecutions are built in there, and why they should be under jurisdiction of the Rome Statute of ICC, and why ICC, after consideration, should open a case in these elements of international crimes. Starting 2014, we observed three main trends in the occupied territories in the occupied peninsula. We see that they accelerate the pace, and they turn this resort into military base. There is military build-up, military equipment, and now we see that Russia carries out war in Syria using military base in Crimea. And they send missiles from there that are then used in military actions in Syria. And we understand that in order to build this military base, we understand and we follow this trend, the second trend. They want to replace population there, because the whole population of Crimea is considered as potentially disloyal. Even those people who welcomed coming of Russian spring, they saw Russian Federation as they saw it on screens of their TV sets, and they believed that they will provide for their rights and freedoms, the same as it was in Ukraine. And in authoritarian Russia, they have lower level of protection of rights. And the people have peaceful assemblies, even with portraits of Putin, and people do not understand why their meetings are disrupted. But Russian power understand everything quite well, and they consider population as disloyal, potentially disloyal, and they replace population in two ways. First way is by the guided migration and start of different programs of resettling of citizens from different regions of the Russian Federation. They resettle them to Crimea. And the second, one more trend is political persecution system and the signal that is really powerful to active minority that they should flee peninsula. So our center follows these political persecutions. They are done in different ways using legal mechanisms such as interrogations, fabricated administrative cases, and also beatings, forceful disappearance, torture, killings, and now there is a list of political prisoners, more than 100 people. Many of them are Crimean Tatars, and this is a threatening situation, not only because this is for now, but also that openly speaking Ukrainian state has no leverage how to protect its citizens that are living in the territory of the occupied peninsula, and they are now facing these occupants. So this communication has several important goals. This is not only to provide an objective picture of what is going on, but we should show what is going on behind these facades. And so some international delegations go to Crimea, and also there is an issue of two dimensions. This is first a step bringing to responsibility of people who commit such political persecutions, because international crimes, they do not have time limits, and there are many examples in history when political situation changes. 20 or 30 years pass, or 50 years pass, and then if a person lives up to this time, they may face the court. So second dimension sub-task that is really important, the matter is, despite this swap mentioned by Grigory and the previous swaps that happened, and I hope that this announced by Mr. Ermak swap, we hope this will happen. The number of prisoners and the number of people who are persecuted on political grounds, this number in Peninsula increases. And this communication and the understanding that international justice starts to study who fabricates these criminal cases and who provides disorders to people who take decision to commit such things. This may have cooling effect, and this will save lives and health to people who are now facing these occupant forces. We hope for this.
Are you ready for me?
Организация.
Yep.
Okay, thank you, and thanks to everyone. Good afternoon. I will spend the next 10 to 15 minutes summarizing the crimes against humanity and war crimes that the Free Russia Foundation has identified and presented to the ICC in an effort to promote accountability for mid to high-ranking officials of the Russian Federation. In early 2014, the Russian Federation launched a systematic attack against the civilian population in Crimea in furtherance of an official state plan. A principal plank of this attack involved the unlawful arrests, beatings, torture, and other cruel treatment, enforced disappearances, and other inhumane acts to discourage individuals and groups from opposing the illegal occupation of Crimea and to force their departure from Crimea. The ultimate objective of this approach was the annexation of Crimea to the Russian Federation with little to no opposition. Russia's criminal strategy has been at least partially successful. As of May 2020, in an interview with QHA Media, Gyunduz Mamyurov, the Deputy Prosecutor General of Ukraine, noted that more than 48,000 Crimeans had been forced to leave the occupied territory of Crimea and move to the government-controlled territory of Ukraine. At the same time, Russia has been actively colonizing the peninsula, as shown by the resettlement of nearly 73,000 Russian citizens to the occupied territory. Leadership in Crimea have implicated themselves in the achievement of this criminal objective. For example, according to Open Democracy, Sergei Askionov, the so-called leader of Crimea, noted that, quote, "Those who don't respect the laws of the Russian Federation can find themselves somewhere to live anywhere else in the world. There's nothing for these people apart from prison here." This pattern of criminal conduct began in February 2014 and continues to this day, even as of the 26th of September. One of the principal coercive acts relied upon by Crimean and Russian authorities to compel the departure of pro-Ukrainian elements in Crimea was the illegal detention of political prisoners. Most of those detained were arrested by these authorities on terrorism charges, but it was their legal pro-Ukrainian advocacy that led to their imprisonment. Free Russia's submission to the ICC focused on 104 Ukrainian citizens who had been illegally arrested, prosecuted, and imprisoned. In its efforts to oppress, silence, and punish opponents of Russia's illegal occupation, Russian and Crimean authorities targeted four principal groups of Crimean citizens. Firstly, politicians, particularly those in the Mejlis parliament. Secondly, pro-Ukrainian activists. Third, pro-Crimean Tatar activists. And four, alleged saboteurs, spies, and others. In addition to the arbitrary detention of these four groups of persons, their trials were conducted in disregard of their fair trial rights. For example, some of those illegally imprisoned were not given the opportunity to defend against their arrest in a courtroom. Independent lawyers were delayed, denied, or given limited access to the accused. A speedy trial, a fundamental tenet of human rights law, has been denied to many, if not most, of the accused. Further, a significant number of political prisoners were compelled to confess to crimes they did not commit. Failure to confess could lead to punitive measures against them, including acts of torture and cruel or degrading treatment, further delays in trial proceedings already materially delayed without cause, additional charges laid against them, even more inhumane prison conditions, threats made against their family, and perhaps worst of all, at least one person was subjected to a mock execution to compel his false confession. Additionally, in trial proceedings, many of the witnesses were secret or unknown, and not only to the public, but to the accused. In other words, the political prisoners did not even know who was making a terrorism allegation against them, an allegation that for some could lead to more than 10 years in prison. Further, credible allegations exist that at times there were FSB or other agents in the courtroom silently instructing witnesses what to say. This adds credence to the words, according to the Kiev Post, heard by the family of Arsen Sheparov from a senior FSB lieutenant who said, quote, "I will prove by all possible and impossible means that an accused is guilty, even if he's not guilty." Beyond this, trials were largely held behind closed doors. This only compounds the gravity of the fair trial violations that have been denied, not only because an accused is entitled to a public trial, but we're not even clear on the full extent of these fair trial violations. Access to consular services were not allowed for some significant periods of time. In some cases, Ukrainian political prisoners were told that they were not allowed to access consular services at all, as they were now involuntarily made to be Russian citizens, no longer Ukrainian citizens. Let's move on briefly to the allegations of torture in the communication. The crime against humanity of torture, Article 7.1f of the Rome Statute, has also happened systematically against those who have been illegally imprisoned. We were able to document acts causing severe mental and or physical pain. These acts happened when the accused was under the control and custody of Russian or Crimean authorities. Among other allegations, torture took place by different Russian authorities, including the FSB, using electrical shocks in an effort to get the accused to confess. One was beaten in the head, kidneys, arms, and legs with an iron pipe. With another, fingers were broken. Still another endured spinal bruises, as well as having a plastic bag placed over his head to the point of unconsciousness. Further, threats of sexual violence against a detained man were made. Against another, threats of murder. Hands were broken, teeth were knocked out, and still another. Concerningly, the Russian authorities also systematically practiced punitive psychiatry as a form of mental torture, or at the least inhumane treatment. In these cases, prisoners were unnecessarily institutionalized for a material period of time. Persecution. Concerning persecutory treatment under 718 of the Rome Statute, many of these deprivations of fundamental rights were carried out with discriminatory intent. Specifically, these groups were targeted due to their political view, by peacefully opposing the illegal occupation of their country, or due to their religious background in the case of Crimean Tatar activists. Enforced disappearances. Concerning the crime against humanity of enforced disappearances, Article 7(1)I of the Rome Statute, subsequent to their illegal detention, authorities failed to give information on the fate of such persons, even when inquired into by legal representatives or family. For example, Oleksandra was held incommunicado for up to 3 weeks after his arrest, according to Kharkiv Human Rights Protection Group. The ICC criminalizes the crime against humanity of inhumane acts under Article 7(1)K of the Rome Statute. In our view, the crime has been perpetrated systematically against Ukrainian citizens in a multitude of ways. Firstly, the denial of adequate prison conditions. Examples include feeding people inedible food, or at times no food at all, facing severe overcrowding in the prisons, denial of a regular water supply, threats of assaults against them by prison cellmates, and adding pork to food, prohibited for observant Muslims. Further, medical attention was systematically inadequate or denied. In one case, life-saving medical attention was offered on the condition that the person admit to active collaboration with Crimean activists acting in a criminal matter against the state. Concerning COVID protections, a report regarding the group of Crimean Solidarity activists who were arrested noted there were no masks, antiseptic, or other protective equipment at the Simferopol pre-trial detention facility. War crimes, another group of crimes punished at the ICC, were also perpetrated in addition to or in the alternative to the crimes against humanity. This includes the crimes of torture, outrages against personal dignity, unlawful confinement, willfully depriving protected persons of the rights of a fair and regular trial, and the transfer of the occupying power of parts of its population into the territory it occupies, or the deportation of all or parts of the population of the occupying territory within or outside this territory. In isolation, or in the words spoken today, we tend to normalize these crimes happen and just how bad the situation is. There are so many happening so frequently. We need to avoid allowing the widespread and systematic nature of the crimes occurring and turn our focus towards the individual costs that this has had on each person's life who has suffered such a tragedy. Think of waking up one morning in February 2014 in Crimea, and in an instant, everything changes. Suddenly, another country claims territorial ownership over your land. You're opposed to this development, so you express your view publicly. A right so fundamental and sacrosanct that few reasons justify its infringement. You associate with others who share that view, and suddenly, due to this exercise of your basic freedom, your home is raided at 5 o'clock in the morning. This terrifies your children and your elderly mother. No warrant is provided, and evidence isn't found implicating you in any crime. So those conducting the search plant evidence. Of course, due to the planted evidence, you're arrested. In an effort to force you to admit to committing acts of terror and not peaceful legal activities, you're beaten to the point of unconsciousness. After you refuse to admit any guilt, you're detained. Your family may not know where you are, and your lawyer also cannot find you. When the lawyer does find you, a criminal trial commences. Someone, you don't know who they are, testifies that it was you committing terrorist acts. You don't know who's saying it, so you can't challenge her or his testimony or credibility. On this basis, you're convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison, 2,500 kilometers from your home and your family. Your family now fears continued persecution, so they leave Crimea, your homeland, their homeland. This is just a representative example and not necessarily one's specific circumstances, but we do not fear such behavior and treatment in many countries. We expect countries in our community of nations to provide us certain guarantees. Humanity has endured many challenges throughout history to evolve towards more responsible global leadership observing the rule of law, no matter the situation. And we expect this axiom to be respected, and when it is not, much like in Georgia, the former Yugoslavia, Rwanda, Lebanon, Sierra Leone, and other countries, the international community must demand accountability. And it's on this basis that the Free Russia Foundation has sought to contribute to the preliminary examination at the ICC Office of the Prosecutor. We hope that an investigation can be opened and responsible officials of the Russian Federation will be investigated. After this investigation, one that conforms to international best practices, responsible persons should be charged and prosecuted for the systematic perpetration of international crimes. Thank you.
Спасибо, Скотт. Это была очень, на самом деле, плодотворная.
Thank you very much, Scott. It was a huge task and very fruitful work was done. We are very grateful to the human rights compliance and for that global rights compliance, and we are very grateful for this profound document that you submitted to the International Criminal Court. Thank you.